Hey, I think we're live now.
We did it.
We are. We did it. We did it. Week 81, everyone. Crazy. Week 81, Facebook family and the Becker Facebook family, and just love having you guys and inviting us once again to show our beautiful faces in your homes and with y'all together. We have a lovely set of wines in front of us and a lovely panel once again. Our owner, Dr. Richard Becker. We have our winemaker, John Leahy. We have Kaylin Hall, the all things with all people and doing everything here. And then myself, Bobby Totten, the wine club director. And I'm just really excited to share these beautiful wines from our library with y'all today. All 14s for the love of our cellar and our library wines. So we have our 2014 Canada Family Cab, we have our 2014 Chavo Noir, and our 2014 Wilmot Family Cab. So hope y'all have your wines ready with y'all and poured glasses, and I'd love to hand it over to Dr. Becker with some beautiful words, and so we can enjoy these beautiful wines with y'all tonight.
81 weeks of this struggle, and some real light, I think, at the end of the tunnel, especially as the children start to get vaccinated. It's going to make all the difference. And boy, the boosters are important, and we should just really, let's lock this thing out of our country, out of the planet as fast as we can, and just salute the people who fought this battle for us. And you know, we it's hard to say how much we owe them. Anyway, here's a glass of wine to them, and hope they all come to the winery and ask for a free wine tasting. It'll be there. So just remember that. Okay.
And that's how Becker went bankrupt.
I don't have to go to the hospital. That'd be easier over there.
Yeah, heard it here, folks.
Doc, on a more serious note, with the booster shots coming on, am I right to assume that the batteries in the first microchips that got put in us weren't enough, that they needed to recharge?
Well, if you notice metal objects are falling off your body, that's a sign. So, you know, you need
I can honestly say the only metal objects that fall off my body are the ones thrown at me when I don't do the dishes. So.
As long as y'all can see the piercings, you know.
Well, I for one would like to say thank you to everybody who's been taking care of us too, in all seriousness. And I will lift a glass to anyone. So cheers, everyone. But so, all right, Doc, you got to start us off, because we have an incredible lineup tonight. And for those of you joining us, if you haven't purchased the pack up, it is the 2014 range. We've got the Wilmot Family Cab, the Canada Family Cab, and the 2014 Chavo Noir, which is a Merlot Cab Franc blend. So, and I believe we're going to start off with the Wilmot. Is that correct, Dr. Becker?
That's right.
All right. So you got to at least tell us a little bit of a story before Jet gets on here. How long have you, I honestly, we've talked several times, but I don't think have we stated how long you guys have been buying grapes from Jet?
20 years. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a long time. Yeah.
We'll be knocking on that door. Maybe not quite, but it's close.
Right. Well, since I got here in 2010, or excuse me, 2012, and Jet has always made me feel very welcome, first of all. And no matter how much ration of hard time I give Jet, he also gives it right back. Trust me on that one. But I am hard pressed not to absolutely love the fruit that comes off of his property. Between that, the Merlot, the Malbec, the Zinfandel, the Dolcetto, you know, there's the Viognier. It's all beautiful fruit, but this 2014, it's really opening up. I wish I had decanted it 2 hours earlier. It's only been open about 45, 50 minutes right now, but it's starting to really come to life.
You know, there are two great Cabernet vineyards, 18 miles apart. Is that number correct?
Yeah, about 18, 20 miles apart, yes.
And, you know, both I think, among the most beautiful Cabernet in the United States, in my opinion. And they're different. Mm-hmm. And the Wilmot is the first one to, you know, unpack when it moves into the cellar, take over the cellar, and, you know, boss everybody around. And And Canada is patient. When she knocks on the door, then people really begin to answer it. So
Yes.
it's fun to watch the development of these two wines. But this Wilmeth today is beautiful. Just most incredible Bordeaux notes of gosh, dark fruit, raspberry, blackberry, maybe a little, all the classic eucalyptus, forest floor, all that stuff. But really incredible fruit in this wine, dark fruit.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark notes in there. I agree that that's something else on that nose. Oh boy, the flavor. Yeah, I tasted it when I first opened it and tasted it just now, and it's already less than an hour later. It's a completely different wine.
Yeah.
So if you do get these wines, I'm going to tell everybody, decant them hour and a half before service. You will be a happy camper.
Yes.
So Kaylin, what do you think?
Well, it's smelling delicious and tasting delicious. I'm picking up a lot of bramble fruit components on this initially. Oops, I don't know if y'all heard that. That was my email coming through. But really, really lovely fruit components. Maybe a bit of almost pepper. I'm picking up maybe some black pepper, maybe some white pepper, nothing like over the top. Not quite the strong piercing content I usually get off of the Canada Cab. But it is lovely. Maybe a bit of anise, brown spice, things of that nature. What about you, Bobby?
Yeah, definitely getting the almost like a currant, like a black.
Yeah. Dark currant, black currant.
Right.
I just want to add, but interrupt you. I want you to continue that. How impressed I've been with your two palates, Kaylin and Bobby. And this just listening to you describe these wines. All of this is unrehearsed for sure, spontaneous, and it's impressive. But I think John has said the same thing. Excellent palates, both of you.
Well, thank you.
But so now, Bobby, continue.
No, thank you, sir. It's an honor. So,
Hey, Bobby, don't worry. I'm not going to be nice to you for at least 5 minutes.
and we'll see about tomorrow, though. But
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
No, this is great. I mean, just to share this with you guys is just phenomenal. But yeah, the dark currant, the anise, almost the fennel, almost like a dried fennel characteristic. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of herbaceousness, that forest floor. I think it's just it's really it's developed so well. I mean, just the depth of flavor that just kind of comes through with a little bit of the oak showcasing with that dark fruit. It's just a gorgeous wine.
Mm-hmm.
Tasting wine, we've talked about the importance of decanting it, letting it develop, letting it release more and more over an hour or two after it's open. But we haven't ever talked much about the room. And it's very hard to taste wine in an air conditioning situation. It's very hard if there's a breeze blowing across you from AC. It's going to greatly diminish what you perceive, and it's very hard to taste wine outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's too big. You need a little more enclosed environment, and if there's any kind of a breeze or other aromatic things around, which there usually would be, it's just not a good place to taste wine. You need to be in a quiet room, maybe slightly warm, not a cold room, with no fan, no air, no airflow if possible.
So we need to be in a prison cell with wine.
That's right.
I'll keep that in mind.
Or a cave.
Okay.
So who has a better wine menu, Sing Sing or Lompoc? Okay. So Bobby, that's not a real question.
Yeah, I'm thinking the Rock.
Yeah. So Kaylin, I want to go back to you, and you said dark notes, but you said that you had opened your wine late like I did. I
Yes.
want to know, How is it opening in the last 30 minutes? What have you noticed in the change?
So I opened mine at 5:12. That is when the opening process began. So we are really rapidly approaching that 30-minute mark. And when I first opened it and poured it, I did pick up a bit of I'm perceiving as bramble fruit, but I was unable to get into some of the herbaceous depths, like Bobby had mentioned, maybe some forest floor. I'm also starting to now pick up maybe some leather, some coffee. I think those I would kind of attribute to the oak. The fruit is coming through where I'm able to maybe pick out things like red currant, maybe like really ripe blackberry. Things like that, where instead of it's just being a lump of fruit that are dark in color, I'm able to start picking that apart and also dissecting what type of herbaceousness. So Bobby had said like a dried fennel. I'm picking up like almost anise, star anise, something along those lines. As a wine opens up and the more I sit and slowly smell it, and as my air conditioner turns off and on, I'm able to certainly pick up other notes that may have been lost in the wine initially, especially upon opening it. And I'm very partial to the 2014 Chavo. And when I initially poured it, I thought, I can't smell anything. And so I've been trying to smell back and forth through all of the wines. And it's incredible to watch them evolve from, there's for sure some fruit in there, and I know it was aged in oak, and there might be something else, to being able to pick apart specifics. And I always think that's really fun to see what you're able to get beyond just like the initial opening factor and to, primary, secondary, and tertiary flavors and aromatics as well.
John, a question for you.
Sure.
This wine and all three of these have what we define as richness on the palate. What are we tasting when we say this wine is rich? I mean, that's not just the fruit notes and the
No, it's not. It's a couple of different things that go into it. Without the fruit, you're not going to have a full richness. That's for certain. But when you talk about richness, we usually are referring to viscosity and weight. The weight in the mouth or the viscosity. That's part of it. That comes from aging the wine on its lees without racking it for 2 years. If a wine is healthy when it goes into barrel, right after we press. So yesterday we pressed our last tank of wine for the harvest 2021. So we were done pressing all of the red wines. So what we'll do is we'll put those in tank and let them settle and let them finish any primary before we go into barrel with the secondary fermentation. And what we do at that point in time is we'll take a pump or the goose mixer, and we will mix all the lees back into suspension in that tank, and then we pump it into barrel. We do this in order to give each barrel a good protection of lees, a couple of inches of lees in each barrel. Two things it does right off the bat. One, it creates the glycerol, which adds the weight to the mouth. Two, it offers that antioxidant protection, and it keeps the floral component, the fruit component, those dark forest flower components that we're talking about, it keeps those muted in a very reductive or oxygen-free environment so that we won't lose them over time. We have to do that for the full aging of that wine before we bottle. Otherwise, 6 years, 8 years, 10 years into the bottle, you won't have those fruit components left. It's the hardest thing about winemaking to do and do consistently, is to keep that reductive atmosphere. The byproduct of that is the richness that you're talking about. You get that almost umami edge to the wine, that almost unstated fifth element type of thing. But that is really coming from the age, the batonnage that we do on a few of the barrels, to just straight lees aging, not messing with the wine at all, leaving it alone, let it age.
I try to check it every month, John, as you know, and
so and it is an ongoing argument. but in all fairness, without your palate, without my palate, without us tasting that frequently, one, you can't gauge the wine, certainly, and you may lose something. And there's a lot of validity, to the banter back and forth that we talk about, especially when you're concerned about, like in the white wines, losing the fruit. You think it may have been stayed in barrel too long. It's a very legitimate concern. Has it stayed in barrel too long, or has it not been long enough? And that's the perennial argument we have, that back and forth. But there is no doubt that that barrel aging is necessary to create that richness. You have to have that full mouthfeel. You have to have the weight in the palate in order to
How
bring
much
all
of
those
that
flavors out.
is glycerin, glycerol?
Glycerol.
How much of that? How much of the weight is that component of the chemistry in the wine?
That's quite a fair amount. Right? The majority of the weight.
How do you preserve that? How do you make that happen? How do you get that through?
The only way that you're going to produce that glycerol is to let it lay itself down on its own lees, on the byproduct, the yeast, the lees, the particle, the particulate matter that falls out of suspension. Most of that's the lees from the yeast from fermentation. You have to have it on there, otherwise you won't produce that. And
So
it
that adds the body.
pardon?
That adds the body.
Yes, yeah, it does. It's just like, Doc, you know good and well, you can buy glycerol, pure glycerol. It's used in food manufacturing a lot and other things like salad dressing, sauces, things of that nature. It is not allowable to add glycerol to winemaking. It becomes a whole nother product if you start adding different food additives. All of that is a natural byproduct of fermentation and aging. One of the big reasons we age wine, not just for the flavors to come together, but it is to build that body and the length in mouth. And that's the only way you do it. It's time. You cannot replicate that. People have tried. There's a lot of people that jump on these bandwagons like micro-oxygenation, the micro-ox that you use to replicate time rapidly in wine. But small bursts of pure oxygen to age the wine quickly does not quickly form glycerol. That only forms from the layers of yeast and the slow degradation of the yeast body into the wine. Was that geeky enough for everybody?
That was geeky. I liked it.
Okay, perfect.
I love geeking out about this stuff.
Because the only other way I put it is, well, you put it into the barrel and then that starts to develop, and then you got all this good and then suddenly it tastes great.
That's awesome.
Well, what I'm really happy about is the 2014 scent. The other thing is I'm not a very patient person. I don't know how people have the patience to wait 10, 15, 20 years for a good glass of wine. It's always eluded me. And so when we have a 14 and here we are 7 years later, 6, 7 years later, and it's like, wow, this is really good. This is fun. And being able to taste wines that I made back in the early 2000s, you can see the progression, but time is one of those things that I have a hard time waiting. I am definitely a microwave minute person. I put 60 on the microwave instead of 100. Faster. Yeah.
Hit the start button twice.
Yes.
All right. Now,
yeah.
Brenda and Dwayne Canada are knocking on the door. We need to let them in. And,
oh, we do. We absolutely do.
That's great.
And as much as I can, I don't want to leave the Wilmouth wine. I am very excited about the Canada. And both of these wines, this vintage 2014, right after the 2013 horrible vintage of 2013 from that late freeze, 2014 was such a joy to deal with.
All you have to say about the 2013 vintage is that it snowed May 2nd in Fredericksburg.
Yeah,
It
right.
snowed May 2nd in Fredericksburg.
And a lot of people were forced to come clean on some promises they made.
So,
okay, so the 2014 Canada, and I'm sorry, Susan, I just saw your question scroll by a few minutes ago. We're doing the 14 wines, and I hope we answered, and I apologize if we didn't. I'm sorry, Sally, not Susan, Sally. Of course, Susan's on here too. Anyway, the 2014s are what we're tasting: the Wilmouth, the Canada, and the Chavo Noir. So we're on to the Canada. So what is it, Doc, that you like about this vintage and this wine?
golly, everything we've said, although the fruit profile is different. This is very much kind of reminds me of Chateau Margaux. It has all those notes that are in the Wilmouth fruit profile is just like almost nothing I've ever tasted. Mm-hmm. And this is very much reminds me of Margaux when I smell it and taste it.
I'll take that as the best compliment yet.
Wonderful. Lord.
Yeah, it definitely has an old world nose
Yeah.
to it.
These wines had more or less the same French and American oak profile, John, or
More or less. There was slightly more French oak on the Canada than the Wilmouth, but
And I think
we're
I'm-
not talking a significant amount. I will tell you in 2014, I used the exact same yeast on both of those lots.
uh-huh.
I did 2 different yeast protocols on each fermentation with D254 and Uvaferm 43 yeasts. There's a combination that I like to do. And using those, I did that in 2012 and 2014, both with these 2 wines. And I'm very, very happy because we can get some similar esters there. But what it does, having the same yeast, it allows that fruit to shine through. It allows that distinctiveness from that vineyard to come right out in the glass. And they're 2 completely different Cabernets.
Kudos to Bobby for picking these wines. This is a great 14 review, Bobby. It's fun. I wouldn't get to
Absolutely.
if we weren't doing this. This is cool.
Okay, Kaylin. And you got to come up with something good because your mom's watching.
I know. I always see her comments and I try to love everyone's comments or respond to them as much as I can without looking like I'm doing too much computer stuff over here. So hi, Mom. But on this wine, I'm picking up a lot more floral and mineral components, I think, initially on the nose. There's something that on the edge reminds me almost of maybe violets. I'm picking up a bit more graphite, things of that nature. And then on the palate, I'm not picking up as much fruit on this wine. And I don't know if it's just because I did not give it enough time to open up and have the contact with oxygen, but red fruit, I'm picking up some really, really subtle raspberry, maybe some subtle cranberry, red currant, things of that nature. I'm still getting coffee on the palate, which is really nice. Some good spice that I can't quite narrow down. I wouldn't necessarily say that this has the same pyrazine content that I'm used to on the Canada Cabs. Maybe some black pepper, but not necessarily the green pepper or anything like that. Maybe a hint of chocolate.
All of those that you just described are actually
Still
pyrazine.
pyrazine,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. And the maturity of the pyrazine. I get a lot more pyrazine off the Canada than I do off of the Wilmouth currently. Yeah.
The graphite, John, is a pyrazine.
Yes, sir. It
Yeah.
is.
Agreed.
I did not know.
Wait till we get into hexenes later on this week and before your midterm.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. We love that. Yes.
I'm all about that.
And just remember, you are responsible for everything on the syllabus.
Is
We've
that
not provided a syllabus. No.
Yeah, right.
Is what?
those requests?
I think I'm getting a little more dried fruits,
I can see that.
Yeah.
like
Hey,
dried raspberries.
do you think we can embarrass Margaret and try to get the camera on her?
No.
I heard a little voice coming out from the
Yeah.
back
The
there.
ducks say no.
No.
Ducks.
Yeah, so Bobby, what are your impressions of the Canada?
Yeah, I mean, definitely getting that more dried fruit characteristic. So like dried raspberries, almost like a fruit leather, like a
Like fruit roll-ups?
yeah, like fruit roll-ups, but like
Yes.
dehydrated fruits, and kind of that's a weakness of mine. But a little bit of tobacco as well. I mean, just kind of showcases, and almost like a hint of like tea leaves, like a hint of tea, like herbal tea characteristic.
Right on. So I have to share a comment for everybody if they're not following on Facebook, because Gary said, I wonder if the French do Zoom virtual tastings and say things like, this wine reminds me a lot of the Texas Cab from the Becker Winery. Gary,
We hope so.
we hope so, but I have a feeling the French may not be as generous with their descriptors as we are. However, if you want to come with us next June on our cruise, I guarantee you the French will be talking about Texas wine. Or at least the French police will be talking about Texas winemakers, one of the two.
I don't know if I'm there for that.
You're on board with that?
That's great.
Yeah, I like that descriptor, fruit roll-up though, Bobby. That is that dried fruit leather. Yeah.
Right.
Does anybody find, okay, let's go back and forth, if you don't mind, and I'm sorry if I'm interrupting somebody's flow, but I want you to then go back to the Wilmette. To me, there's a bit more acidic structure left in the Canada than there's the Wilmette. The Wilmette has got just a touch more of that overt cellar maturity, that roundness, where the Canada is still slightly angular from,
Yeah, you're
still a little more youth on it.
I agree.
I find that's one of the things I love about doing a side-by-side comparison, being able to do this. Just to see, wow, it's funny. Cabernet, I can tell they're both cabs, but what a monstrous difference between
yeah.
the two.
Radically different.
Those expressions are so cool.
Okay, Monster, what do you think between the two?
Well, they're both fantastic. But and going back and forth between them, I love the nose on the Wilmette, and it smells so warm and rich and fantastic. And the Canada Cap smells beautiful too. But I feel like I'm especially in the setting, I have my air conditioner set too low. This was a mistake of my own here. But it just smells like warm and comforting and all of the things that are cozy and fantastic. And that's exactly what I'm seeking. But I'm excited to get into the Chavo Noir as well.
Yeah.
So,
So
I'm sorry, go ahead, Bobby.
would this be a good indicator between Old World and New World cabs?
Esque, yeah. I mean, there's, as much as this is going to bother me to say this, I mean, the Bordeaux producers really do know Cabernet, and I will strive the rest of my life to make a damn good wine like I've had from there. And we have good fruit, and maybe on the next go round when I'm 300 years old, I can get it right. But yeah, that I think the Canada's got much more of an old world note to it on the nose. Yeah.
There is, Bobby, a great story that Robert Mondavi told me about this. And he told me that in the Paris tasting, when they tasted the red wines, the Bordeaux wines and the Cabernet blends from Napa, he said the French judges, when they came out, they said, "This is ridiculous. This is a waste of our time. It's clear which are the French wines, which are the superior wines," and they named the California wines. So, talk about being able to tell the difference. And those guys couldn't do it with their eyes blinded. So that was a great moment in comparing the wines from around the world.
Yeah, wasn't it? It was Steven Spurrier who organized that, right? Because he did. He literally got kicked out of France for a number of years.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
yeah.
But Robert Mondavi said, it's clear which are the French wines. These are the French professional wine tasters.
Right.
So when you make great wine, it's great wine, period. And they do kind of draw together. I think that really happens.
Mm-hmm. I do too. I think the biggest disservice you can do to yourself is to ignore a wine region just because of the region. You need to taste it. You need part of wine isn't just about having a glass of wine at the end of the day or with friends and family. I mean, that's a huge part of it. But to me, a part of wine is exploration. It's travel.
Well, that's why I'm always trying to promote Waco. And sorry, I can't resist.
Yeah.
Dr. Pepper, the Ranger Museum.
Yes.
Are we going to put a tasting room up there?
The Great Waco Tasting of 2022.
That's it.
I think we should. I think we should get all the Twigga members together and do a Waco tasting.
I think we should do. If we're fully armed, we should do
Yeah.
it.
I got my corkscrew in my bottle right here. What more do you need?
We should all be carrying something.
Uh,
Well,
okay.
carrying
All
some
right.
supplies.
Of course, Kaylin, we're going to give into your desire to get into the Chavo Noir, but not before I remind you that I'm going to pick on you first for all the food.
And I am now considering food.
After 81 weeks, you understand the result.
I get excited and distracted and
Right.
all the fun
I
things.
can't believe, has it really been 81 weeks, Bobby?
Allegedly, if we can
Allegedly.
count, it's been 81.
Huh.
Take,
It feels more like 190. I know. All righty. So does anybody else want to do any comparison between the 214 caps?
Not yet. Let's come back.
Okay, we'll come back to it. Let's hop into the Chavo Noir, the 2014. So this was the first year of Chavo Noir too. So, and it's a very classic. It's a 70-30, I believe. Hold on just a second.
80-20.
80-20, sorry. Yep, 80-20. I had to go grab the bottle off the sidebar. All right. Wow.
Right.
That's something. Whoosh. First, let's talk about the name.
Mhm.
Joe speaks French. I speak French. Joe speaks French correctly. But I'm not worried about it. And so, one of the great blends of Cabernet Franc and Merlot was Cheval Blanc, which means white horse. So I thought, well, let's make the Texas version of this and call it Cheval Noir. But there is already a Cheval Noir in the world. So we're thinking about that's black horse. What if we called it black horses and say Cheval instead of Cheval? So we did. But the correct spelling of noir, N-O-I-R, if Chavo is plural for horses, is is noirs, N-O-I-R-S. And I said that's going to be so off-putting to the 99.9% of the population that doesn't speak French, that let's just make the mistake and call it Chavo Noir. So it's actually it's a mistake, but I like it anyway.
It's a happy mistake.
It's a
good one.
it's on purpose. We knew about it.
Right. Well, and there is a reason that French is the diplomatic language of the world. I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't want to talk to somebody about wine and food?
Again, this is just loaded with richness. I mean, it's just wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's one of the again, I'm going to go back to the fact that I really love that we get to go back, 6-7 years to find a wine, or 10 years to find a wine, that to be able to taste these older vintages, and I love sharing that. It's one of the things that took me a long time to get into, was a vintage glass of wine, and not knowing, and I always look back, I was like, yeah, just to be a pariah about, oh, it's 2 years old, it can't be that good, to, what do you mean? Oh, 10, 12 years? Yeah, let it lay down for a while. So, this wine, just off of the nose, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's still got a youthful nose. It's probably going to last a bottle for quite some time.
Yes. This has eucalyptus
Yes.
more than the other.
I just absolutely love Merlot.
Well, there's Merlot and there's this Merlot. Whoosh,
Right.
that's
Well, that is something that we get, we can do very, very well here in Texas. Our partners grow some damn good Merlot.
well, I always thought, you heard me say for years that I'd never tasted Texas Merlot until John got his hands on it. And you want to tell them what you do that's different, the way you handle Merlot, how you produce this great, dense, complex.
I respect each berry as an individual. I listen
talk
to it. I give them their space. And I beat the crap out of them, throw them in a tank and
Oh,
ignore
just don't know where. I can tell you right now.
No, I first of all, we don't take Merlot slightly bit early. There are a lot of grapes that are forgiving if they're not completely phenologically ripe. Merlot is not one of them.
Mhm.
Had a Merlot that was very off-putting or turned you off completely instantly, I will almost guarantee you it was because it was taken phenologically underripe, under its premium. It's one of the few grapes that you have to wait almost too long. And to be honest with you, Doc, you really can't you can't make good Merlot unless you have a grower that is willing to allow that to set as long. And the groundwork that you guys built up with all of these growers before I came on board allowed me that that leisure, really honestly, to be able to communicate with them what I'm trying to do and why, and the basics of understanding were already there. All of these guys, the best thing in the entire world to me is to go to West Texas, listen to a grape farmer with that wonderful, beautiful West Texas drawl. Jet, I'm not making fun of you. Well, I find the finesse in this grape to be quite interesting. It's intriguing. There isn't a thing Jet doesn't understand or Brenda doesn't understand or about what they're growing. And that to me is half the battle. I'm able to take the beautiful fruit and experiment with it at home. But Merlot loves to be hot during fermentation, more so than just about any other grape. And Rachel will gladly take the opposing view on this. I want to push that heat envelope towards 90 degrees Fahrenheit during fermentation. And that's also pushing the envelope about where fermentations stick and stop if it gets too hot in there. But Merlot loves it, and you get a lot of that nuance out of it if you can bring up that heat immediately. And that's a trick I learned from a wonderful winemaker named Sarah Gott, who would take her fruit and she would preheat the tank before inoculating. She'd keep it cold for multiple days, and then she would warm the fruit up to 75 Fahrenheit, then inoculate, and then get that heat up to its maximum level. And it takes a lot of work, and you've got to be on top of the pump overs and everything else, but you get a nuance out of that fruit that is unbelievable.
So, John, what I'm always saying, let's do more cold soaks. You're turning the temperature up in the tank. I mean,
No, that's the wrong time. We do cold soak. But okay, for instance, like any tool, turning the heat up in the tank before inoculation allows that fermentation to take over rapidly and to ferment quickly, and you knock out any competition from the wild yeast, the Callecera. You knock out the possibility of some of the more interesting scobies, bacteria and yeast forming. You get rid of that. The cold soak does that to an extent too, but what the cold soak is really doing is allowing that extract from the skin and the color stability. And you're allowing the tannins to come out, which take a long time. The tannins are also water soluble. They come out into suspension, they grab onto those color molecules and they stabilize that color. That's what really the cold soak is for, is to ensure color stability. We also know now a tiny amount of sacrificial oak or grapeseed tannin in the ferment will help alleviate that problem, and you can get fermentation going quickly and get the extract out of there from the heat. So, and that's what we do with the Merlot. This has got to be boring everybody to tears.
no, it's
It's great.
Really? Because I'm sitting there like a maniacal, just a pirate, screaming about 2 degrees in temperature on the tank. And my poor cellar master, Daryl, sitting there just shaking his head. And he's like, for the love of God, we get it.
So does it take a special kind of yeast to be able to withstand that kind of heat?
Well, most yeast, Bobby, will withstand even higher temperature. It's, we hydrate them at 115 degrees Fahrenheit, but the problem is the heat retention in that tank and the stratification in that tank. You have to pump over that juice and keep it to a certain temperature. If you don't do that, the osmotic pressure, as the alcohol comes up, the osmotic pressure comes up on the yeast, and osmotic pressure is what's going to cause those yeasts to go dormant and stop functioning. And without enough oxygen, the yeast won't build a healthy colony. And without enough nutrition, the yeast won't act and be as active as they need to get over that osmotic pressure. So yeah, you got to make sure it's a healthy place for them. The heat is not necessarily the problem. The heat in conjunction with a few other things. Less than perfect fermentation, less than perfect fruit, damaged fruit, all of those environmental factors go into it. So,
Okay.
But the heat is important if you want flavor like we get in the Chavo Noir. So is that a good segue to get Kaylin to talk about the Chavo Noir?
Yes, let's hear it, Caleb.
Okay. Well, on this nose, I'm picking up a bit
She
of.
may not have any left. That's
I've been trying to conserve and enjoy this moderation while I waited. So I am picking up a bit of eucalyptus, but also maybe something like rose petal or even lilac. It is quite floral, and I think it's lovely.
lilac is interesting here. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. I'm picking up maybe some cocoa, something along the edge of coffee as well on the nose. And then with a light swirl, I do get some bright red fruit, maybe some cherry, raspberry, things like that. And I am picking up a bit of pepper, but nothing over the top, overwhelming, or to where I would call it spicy. It's very rich. The tannins are lovely and velvety, but they're there, not astringent by any means. But it's lovely. It's very pretty.
It is a beautiful wine.
So
Those are all of my good words.
with President Lincoln looking over my shoulder and talking about lilac, and you have to think about Walt Whitman's great poem about the death of Lincoln called "When Lilac Last in the Dooryard Bloomed, and the great star early drooped in the western sky in the night. I mourned, and we shall mourn, ever returning spring." Wow. But now let's carry on about lilac.
The depth of the wine and the depth of the poetic. Just, yeah.
Can we all stand on our chairs and start reciting Walt Whitman, Captain, my Captain?
I'll vote for that.
Kaylin, you knocked it out of the ballpark with that description.
Thank you.
Man.
I've been waiting.
Yeah, you've been waiting. It still doesn't let you off the hook about the food.
Kalen's obviously an fan, so this is as a
Okay, a real serious question for everybody on the panel, and we'll start with you, Bobby. Of the three wines, do you have a favorite? And if so, which one? You don't have to say why, just which one do you like the best, if any?
I lean towards that 14 Wilmeth.
Okay. All right. Doc, any of the three?
I truly love each one.
Okay.
I mean, they're each one is so rich and so complex, and so I'm so proud of each one that I love it.
I'm very proud of these wines too. Absolutely. Kaylin, of the three, could we safely assume Chavo Noir?
Even with this era.
At this moment, I think it's the Chavo Noir.
Okay.
And I would say if you caught me on a different day, a different time, when they were all initially first released, any of that can play a factor. But right now, the Chavo is, it's it for me today.
Right on. Any other comments about, do you want to revisit, before we go into the food, does anybody want to revisit the comparison between the two caps now that they've been sitting open for a while?
I just went back and did it. Holy smokes.
Okay.
Holy smokes.
Mind blowing. It really is.
The Canada, I just picked it up after it's sitting for a bit. I got an incredible burst of violet.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, like old fashioned violet perfume. The violet eau de toilette. Yeah, that the Wilmeth is just dark to me.
Yeah.
But
I'm
did any-
picking up a bit of almost caramel edge on the nose on the Wilmouth too, which I'm not opposed to. It's very cozy and delightful.
Doc, any comparison notes now that they've been sitting for a minute?
I thought maybe I think there's a lot of power in the Chavo Noir and it would overwhelm them. But it's interesting, it almost sets them up.
Mhm.
Somehow the Chavo Noir then going backward through them. These are all happy together.
They are.
They
Lots
are indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was really worried about that actually when we were talking before we went live about which ones to taste in order. That's why I suggested the Chavo at the end because of the very strong pyrazine content from the Cab Franc in there. And but you're right, that nose, the taste, it did set up the Cabernets nicely. But that I'm going back to that Canada. That perfume is unbelievable.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, Kaylin. It's that time of the day.
Is it that time? Okay, so I've put a few minutes of thought into this, and with the Chavo, I think I want like roasted duck breast with plum sauce.
Mhm.
I think that would be really lovely.
Don't mention roasted duck, please. Two ducks are attending the lecture.
Yes. Do you not see them? They're staring at me and they have been all night.
They were looking at me, and maybe that's where the inspiration came.
Now you're sounding like all of my Cajun family members.
They looked at me too much.
Yeah.
And then I think that with the Wilmouth Cab, I would almost want to do like a, have you had a mushroom steak?
Mhm.
I think that would be really lovely.
Yeah.
Maybe even like a mushroom risotto, something along those lines, just something really rich. And then with the Canada Cab, I'm gonna have to stick with a really classic beef tenderloin, something that cannot be, broken is the beautiful bond between cab and beef. And so I think that is where I'm going to go for the Canada Cab. I think specifically Perini, I think usually this time of year reminds me of really lovely tidbits I occasionally get to have from Perini Ranch, or even going home for the holidays and getting a really lovely like smoked beef tenderloin. So I'm thinking about it.
Absolutely. Okay, Bobby, you're up.
Oh, I'm having dreams of beef bourguignon.
Okay.
So a nice beef bourguignon with the Wilmouth or ossobuco.
Oh,
Buco would be great.
so
Yeah.
good.
It
Also
would.
on mine.
Okay, Doc.
Well, 2 weeks ago, on Friday night before the Texas-Oklahoma game, that we went with my sister Carolyn and my brother-in-law Joe to the game. Carolyn made beef bourguignon. She had been cooking for 2 or 3 days and sort of heating it up and letting us, come to its own. That would be that's the best I've ever tasted. And that would be wonderful to either or both of the cabs.
Mhm.
Monday night, Lisa Perini made a beef short rib that she cooked for days.
Oh,
That I told her, this is not just good beef, this is just the best I've ever tasted. It was just knocked our socks off. And the Chavo Noir would love to be a guest at that picnic.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It
I'm
was really
now, there's no way I'm topping that one. Not after you said Lisa Perini and beef short rib in the same breath.
Kaylin brings it up and then Doc brings it up and
Right. It's funny because when I was tasting the Wilmouth, I really was thinking good old California tri-tip with wild mushrooms, melody of wild mushrooms.
Yeah.
Just wonderful. But that now that you said short rib and Chavo Noir, that's now I want short rib. So thank you.
And you want Lisa short ribs.
Yeah, I bet.
We all do.
Now I think what I'm going to do is tell Jody that we're going to go on a quick little roundabout on Saturday, and we're going to drive straight up to Perini and have lunch.
If you do that, let me know.
Yeah. Oh, hey Bobby. So what is online for next week for our next club selection? Or excuse me, not club, but virtual tastings.
yes, sir. Yeah. So we've got a little special something going on. So of course, we're going to revisit 18 GSM because it just won double gold at the San Antonio Livestock Show and Rodeo.
Mhm.
So that is super special. And then a couple new releases just for this experience here for the virtual tasting crowd and group. So we're going to do the 2020 Estate Sauvignon Blanc, which we're writing up the notes on it, and it's a beautiful wine. And then the 19 Reserve Malbec, which has not been released yet, but tasted out of barrel, and it's delicious. And, so we are exclusively sharing that with y'all as the Facebook virtual tasting group. It's not released to the winery as of yet. So you get a sneak peek into the world of what we're going to release. So
Perfect.
I look forward to y'all experiencing that with us next week.
That sounds great. That sounds wonderful. Any other winery news, Kaylin? Anything coming up? Texas.
Well, it is Texas Wine Month. We are in the midst of it.
Right.
We had a few of y'all from the virtual tasting out at the winery for the Lavender Festival. And I want to say, one, thank you for joining us. It was fabulous to see and meet some of you for the first time in person anyhow. And we this weekend is the Fredericksburg Food and Wine Fest. And if it is my understanding, it is my understanding that this is their 30th anniversary. And we're super excited. We have one of the events at the winery. It is a sold out event. So we don't have any tickets that are available to sell, but they may have some available for the Saturday events as well. It's a busy time. The weather is gorgeous right now, and we've still got zinnias in bloom. We've got beautiful sunsets and fantastic places to enjoy wine. So come and see us. We'd love to have you.
Please.
Absolutely. Doc, any final words, sir?
No, just our hearts, thoughts with all the people still fighting this battle. The ICUs are still got lots of sick people in them, and lots, gosh, to lose this great patriot Colin Powell was so sad. And he was certain to had vaccines, but he had terrible other disorders that really got him. But anyway, let's hearts and thoughts and binds to those people. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I'd like to add my gratitude to all those people too. So thank you all for allowing us another hour in your homes, and we hope you have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week. So cheers, good wine, and good food.
Thanks.